Tonight, 1 million trips in a week. Premiers past and present reach across the aisle to mark the Metro's first weekend. Hello, I'm Nakari. Thorpe. This is ABC News. Three people killed in a stabbing rampage at a German festival. RFK Jr. drops out of the race for president to endorse Donald Trump. And the Raiders come from behind to upset the Panthers in Canberra. But first to some breaking news. Several aftershocks have been felt across much of New South Wales following yesterday's earthquake in the Hunter. Lillian Watkins has been following the latest developments and joins us now. Lillian, how big were today's shocks?
Nakari, there have been several aftershocks felt in the region since yesterday's quake, one nearly as big. Now, a 4.5 magnitude earthquake hit Muswellbrook, about 120 kilometres west of here, at about 4:30 p.m. this afternoon. It follows a 4.7 quake that was felt across much of the state yesterday. The epicentre was in the same spot. They pinpointed it to the heart of BHP's Arthur Coal Mine in Denman near Muswellbrook. And it looks like there's been more than 600 people who have already lodged reports saying they felt those shocks today. No one has been injured and there have been only minor reports of damage. Power in some areas has been affected, but it does sound like the power is back on. We know that Muswellbrook is still struggling with some water outages. Yesterday's quake was the biggest to hit the region since the 1989 devastating earthquake that killed 13 people.
Lillian Watkins in Newcastle, thank you. There's an old saying, success has many fathers, but failure is an orphan. And if the number of politicians who took a ride on the Sydney Metro today is in any guide, then the new line is shaping up as a success. Leaders past and present from across the political aisle attended a ceremony at Barangaroo this morning as the service passed 1 million trips in its first week.
How many premiers does it take to change a city's transport system? Several, it turns out, with 3 of them turning up for the ceremony to mark the new line's first weekend.
It feels historic.
These projects take years, but they ultimately transform our city and state.
But there was one notable absence. The driving force behind the project, Gladys Berejiklian, was invited, but not on board.
My 16-year-old, who doesn't normally tell me what he's doing every weekend, said to me, I'm heading on the Metro with my mates this weekend. So I thought that was pretty awesome. And then he sent me a text message of Gladys. So trying to burn me, I think.
A decade ago, Labor opposed the sale of electricity assets that helped fund construction of the Metro. Now that it's built, no one is arguing.
I haven't always been aligned. There was a little moment where 2015 comes to mind, but what we're doing is celebrating as one.
We played a very small role in this, let's be honest.
Roughly 200,000 passengers have used the new M1 line every day since it opened. That means so far nearly 1 million people have come along for the ride.
Rail fanatics packed the new Martin Place station on its first weekend run.
Kids have been really excited about the Metro arriving in Sydney, so we thought it's a great day out for the family.
The Metro is so excited because I get to go on it.
Although some did have a bone to pick.
We thought we were going to go under the harbour through a glass receptacle and be able to see fish and the whales, and no, it didn't work out that way.
A more grounded complaint came from those on the northwest section of the Metro, with power issues forcing people onto buses between Bella Vista and Castle Hill. But the mostly positive reception has left the door open for more Metros.
We've got an ambitious Metro building agenda. We are spending tens of billions of dollars on new Metros for Sydney, 3 more.
They'll be waiting a while, with the next brand new line set to open in 2032. Brianna Parkins, ABC News, Sydney.
German police are hunting for a man who stabbed 3 people to death at a summer festival in the northwestern city of Solingen. 8 more festival goers are wounded, 5 of them seriously, in what police say was a deliberate attack. A lone male suspect is on the run and the motive for the attack remains unclear.
1, 2, 3, go! A summer party in honour of a German city celebrated for its long history of blade making, ending in violence.
Wir möchten jetzt bitte, dass keine Panik ausbricht.
The organiser telling locals to go home calmly, even though an armed suspect was still on the loose. The attack began just after 9:30 p.m. when a man started stabbing people seemingly at random. First responders raced towards the main square as a suspect disappeared into the darkness. Heavily armed police searching for him long into the night. For now, there's little sign of him and police aren't sure of his motives either.
We're assuming he's a lone wolf. He's on the run. Witnesses are in shock or can't speak right now. We have to pull all the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle together.
The attack is just the latest knife crime to shock Germany. In May, a failed Afghan asylum seeker allegedly stabbed to death a policeman and wounded several others in a politically motivated attack in Western Germany. With knife crime seemingly on the rise, the Interior Minister is now reportedly proposing to ban switchblades and knives longer than 6 centimetres.
Brutal crimes are committed with knives and they cause serious injuries or even death. That's why we need stricter laws and more controls.
The minister will be hoping this latest shock stabbing helps convince doubters in the government to push the proposed changes through. Michelle Rimmer, ABC News.
A woman has been charged with murder after a man's body was found inside a surfboard bag on a rural property in northern New South Wales. The body of a 62-year-old man was discovered in the driveway of the Darkwood property near Coffs Harbour on Thursday evening. Detectives arrested 35-year-old Lisa Marie Cummings, who was known to the man, in Nambucca Heads yesterday. She was charged with domestic violence murder and faced court today, where she did not apply for bail. In Sydney's West, police are trying to determine what caused the death of a man who was found in a park this morning. A passerby discovered the man in an Auburn park just before 7 a.m. He had suffered a serious injury to the back of his head. Police rushed to the scene and performed CPR on the man, but he couldn't be saved. He is yet to be formally identified, but is believed to be aged in his 30s. The federal government is under renewed pressure to take practical action to stop men's violence against women. Amid a horrifying year of gendered violence, an expert panel has called for sweeping reform, including better data, specialist crisis accommodation and tougher restrictions on alcohol and gambling.
Across the country, communities were left outraged by the killing of so many women earlier this year.
No more violence, no more hate!
It prompted a crisis response from leaders in May who asked an expert panel to urgently advise on how to combat men's violence against women and children. Its recommendations now laid bare.
The government commissioned it. And we feel they need to act upon it.
Among them, that National Cabinet keep the issue as an ongoing priority. Also calls for an urgent inquiry into the link between suicide and victims of family and sexual violence. Prioritising the experience of marginalised groups, including First Nations people, and youth-specific services to help children affected by domestic violence who often end up at adult services.
They can't access entitlements that might be available to an adult because they need a parent's consent.
The panel also recommended a total ban on gambling ads, a move currently being pushed for by some in Canberra, and restricting when alcohol can be sold and delivered because it's known to increase the severity and frequency of violence.
We know it has a direct link to homicide. So that's really, really important for us to face up to.
As the Domestic Violence Commissioner made clear this week, there must also be a fresh focus on engaging men and boys at risk of using violence. And as both major parties work through the recommendations, that's one thing they already agree on.
There is more work to be done, and we've been very open about that. There is so much more to be done.
2 months ago, the government began publishing the number of women killed in intimate partner violence. So far this year, that's 15. But one of the biggest challenges remains, which is knowing just how widespread domestic, family and sexual violence is. And collecting more of that data is considered crucial. Evelyn Manfield, ABC News, Canberra.
And if this story has raised any issues for you, you can get help by calling 1-800-RESPECT. Well, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. began his campaign for the White House as a Democrat. He then announced he would be running as an independent. Now, the nephew of the late Democratic President John F. Kennedy has suspended his own bid and has endorsed Donald Trump.
On the campaign trail in Arizona, with a special guest in tow.
His candidacy has inspired millions and millions of Americans, raised critical issues that have been too long ignored in this country.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has thrown his support behind Donald Trump after suspending his own campaign for the White House, claiming he never got a fair go.
In my heart, I no longer believe that I have a realistic path to electoral victory in the face of this relentless, systematic censorship and media control.
RFK Jr. says he's found he's aligned with the Republican candidate on key issues, including funding foreign wars and border security. And the Democrats ignored his approaches.
Vice President Harris declined to meet or even to speak with me.
RFK Jr.'s polling numbers were dropping and his funds dwindling ahead of his decision. He was also making headlines more for his bizarre encounters with animals than his campaign.
I said, let's go put the bear in Central Park and we'll make it look like he got hit by a bike.
RFK Jr. comes from one of America's most prominent Democratic families.
And under the authority...
His uncle was President JFK. His father was also assassinated while seeking the Democratic presidential nomination. His siblings have condemned his decision to back the Republican candidate. Our brother Bobby's decision to endorse Trump today is a betrayal of the values that our father and our family hold most dear. These past weeks, it's been all about the Democrats, a new candidate, a new running mate, a star-studded convention. But with this announcement, the pendulum swings a little bit back towards the Republicans, and both parties will be eagerly awaiting the results of the first polls after this latest twist in the campaign.
It's a little disappointing just because we put a lot of time and energy into this. The truth is, more encouraged than I was before.
As the presidential race heads into the home straight. Barbara Miller, ABC News, Washington.
For years, a dispute has been playing out in Sydney's northwest over plans to turn a sporting ground in Marsfield into a housing development. The local RSL club owns the land and says the fields aren't getting the level of use they once did, but opponents of the development are fast running out of options to keep the site as green space.
It's where some of Australia's footy legends had their first start playing for Eastwood Rugby Club.
Matt Burke turned it into a winning lead.
But the TG Milner Fields in Marsfield are now at the centre of Sydney's debate about the need for housing versus green space.
It's just such a shame that, that it all could be gone in a blink of an eye.
We love playing at TG so much.
The owner of the site, Northride RSL, wants to convert the 3 playing fields into 132 townhouses.
This is going to be filled up with houses with no backyards. Where the heck are the kids going to play?
The local RSL says the rugby fields no longer serve the demographics of the Marsfield community and would cost millions to refurbish. The development would include a 1-hectare public park with sports facilities and a $6 million contribution to local council for affordable housing. Last year, the Liberal-controlled Ryde Council asked for permission to compulsorily acquire TG Milner, but that was rejected by the state government over concerns about the council's ability to pay for it.
We have a deficit of sports fields in our local community already, and we project with increased housing supply over the next 20 years that will increase dramatically the gap between sports field use and need.
The council estimates TG Milner to be worth about $35 million, while the owners of the site say it's valued at $85 million.
Ryde Council says it only has $15 million put aside, but wants the state and federal governments to help make up the shortfall.
The local ALP candidate campaigned on saving the fields in the lead-up to the last election after the RSL first lodged development plans in 2022.
What we have seen in recent months is the new Minns government
backflip on its position and essentially leave TG Milner completely in the hands of developers.
The local government minister wouldn't comment on that claim, but did say the council could reapply to purchase the fields if it found a funding source. The fate of the project will be decided in the coming months. Lydia Feng, ABC News, Sydney.
The World Health Organization says a baby has been left paralysed in Gaza's first case of type 2 polio in 25 years. The United Nations has repeated calls for a ceasefire so the polio vaccine rollout can go ahead safely. They say delaying a humanitarian pause will increase the already high risk of the disease spreading among the children of Gaza who are living in unsanitary conditions. Hamas has agreed to a 7-day pause as requested by the UN. The WHO says at least 2 rounds of the vaccine for every child under 10 will be needed to halt transmission. Parents of children in Indonesia who died or were left severely disabled from contaminated syrup medicine, so they've been awarded a pitifully small amount of compensation. More than 200 children died and more than 100 were left with debilitating lifelong injuries from batches of syrup made with an ingredient normally used for antifreeze products.
2 years after launching a class action over the deaths and injuries of their children, parents and lawyers meet to assess the decision, and it's another blow.
No parent wants their child's life to be reduced to a figure, but the court's decision is far from just. It feels like humiliation.
Memories follow me left and right. Hey everyone.
Safitri Puspa lost her 8-year-old son Pangagar after he was prescribed liquid paracetamol by a doctor. As hundreds of children became sick with acute kidney disease across Indonesia, a common link emerged: syrup medicine made by the manufacturer Afi Pharma that had been approved for sale. While more than 200 babies and children died, others were left with severe disabilities, forcing some parents to quit work to look after their children full-time. 4 employees of the drug maker were jailed last year, but the company, the raw ingredient supplier and Indonesia's drug regulator have always denied responsibility and blamed each other. Now, a 2-year-long class action has concluded, with the court awarding families just over $5,500 each, well short of what they asked for.
The judge ruled the syrup manufacturers did do something illegal, but instead of forcing them to pay real compensation, they just have to pay a token amount, more like a donation.
At no point in the past few years has Indonesia's health ministry or drug regulator been found at fault over the deaths. Lawyers say the families are disappointed this latest civil court decision also let the government bodies off the hook.
We've already been through our lowest point well before this court process, so we can still fight and look at avenues for appeal.
The syrup medicine manufacturer has criticised the court decision and still maintains it wasn't obliged to test ingredients it bought from suppliers. Bill Birtles, ABC News, Jakarta.
Russian police have ended a siege at a penal colony which saw 4 prison guards killed and several more hospitalised. The men had posted videos online proclaiming their loyalty to the so-called Islamic State. They also reportedly demanded a helicopter to help them escape. In the videos, they are holding guards hostage and one is wearing a rigged-up vest. The Russian National Guard says it stormed the facility and snipers shot the men dead. Local media is reporting the suspects were from Central Asian countries and were serving time for drug offences and manslaughter. Italian authorities have launched a manslaughter probe after 7 people were killed in a yachting accident off the coast of Sicily. Prosecutors say they don't have an individual in their sights, but the investigation will be based on salvaging the wrecked ship. Divers retrieved the remains of the last person unaccounted for, 18-year-old Hannah Lynch, 5 days after her family's luxury yacht sank near Palermo. Her father, tech entrepreneur Mike Lynch, was also killed in the tragedy. It's been a century since Australia's Cobb & Co coaches run their last mail run. Now, hundreds have gathered in rural Queensland to recreate the historic run and evoke some of the nostalgia for Australia's bush history.
An Australian icon brought back to life after 100 years.
Just gives me a lovely fuzzy feeling.
I think I'm fairly well dressed up for it, yes. I don't normally dress like this.
Cobb & Co coaches used to transport mail and people through regional Australia. The last run was in 1924 between Surat and Yulba in Queensland's Maranoa region.
Cobb & Co was a way of life, better way of life.
This weekend, hundreds are taking part in a recreation of that final run. Historian Steve Ralph built the main coach.
Cobb & Co was very important. They had mail, they had gold, they carried freight, they were the lifeline.
Cole Anderson has been training her horses for months, but with just weeks to go, she broke her tibia.
There was no way in the world I was going to miss out on this ride.
She's enlisted an army of family and friends to get her through.
We've got to pull up at our stops and we've got all the food on board, so I don't even have to get out of the wagon to go eat. It's just all there. Cup of tea, cup of cake. I've got sandwiches, wraps, sorted.
The ride left Surat on Saturday morning. It's not expected into Yulba near Roma until Sunday afternoon. These days, if you were to drive that route, it would only take an hour. The Surat Post Office still does that mail run 100 years on.
Today we do it in a D-Max ute, which is far more comfortable than what it was in the old days with the coach.
And just a bit quicker. Toby Loftus, ABC News, Surat.
The Raiders have responded to last week's Cowboys hammering, upstaging the reigning premiers, the Panthers, 22-18 in Canberra. A stunning intercept try stole victory from Penrith's grasp and put their position in the top two under pressure.
A windy afternoon in the nation's capital, and it was wreaking havoc on the players.
It stretches out.
But the Panthers quickly responded as the sides went blow for blow in the first half. Leading 12-10 at the break, this try extended Penrith's buffer.
Out of nowhere, Penrith!
Before the hosts pegged back the margin with this full field intercept, ensuring a major late season upset.
Canberra go 100 metres!
There's no if here. We're going to make the finals.
Across the ditch, the Bulldogs spoiled Shaun Johnson's send-off in Auckland and officially booked their place in finals for the first time since 2016.
The Bulldogs, they're going to ice another cake!
But they could finish the season without skipper Stephen Crichton. Jessica Stewart, ABC News.
The Knights have snapped a two-game losing streak in the NRLW with a 36 points to 16 win over the Eels. Newcastle star fullback Tamika Upton scored a double to give the defending champions their third win of the season. Kick-off was delayed by more than 40 minutes, with the NRL set to review why medical staff weren't in place for the start of the game. Richmond has claimed the AFL's wooden spoon for the first time in 17 years after losing to Gold Coast 94-66 at the MCG. With club greats Dustin Martin and Dylan Grimes watching on, Marlion Pickett gave Tigers fans something to cheer about, scoring in his final AFL game. The Suns were too good as they controlled the game to end their underwhelming season with a victory. Madison de Rosario is Australia's highest profile Paralympian and will be the joint flag bearer at the opening ceremony in Paris this Thursday morning. She's going into her 5th Paralympic Games, seeking to add to her 2 gold medals and to continue her work as an advocate for disability. National Sport reporter David Mark has this special report.
Madison de Rosario is leaving no stone unturned in her quest for more glory at her 5th Paralympic Games.
Oh, that's nice.
In a long and decorated career, she finally broke through to win a Paralympic gold medal in the 800 metres and the marathon at the Tokyo Games 3 years ago.
Madison de Rosario takes the gold in the marathon.
But she's not resting on her laurels. Instead, she's pushing harder than ever.
Once you kind of do it, you want to know how much further you can go than that.
And so de Rosario has dropped the 800 metres from her program and is going all out for gold in the 1,500 and 5,000 metres events on the track.
We weren't willing to line up for an event that we didn't think we could contend a gold medal in.
Then De Rosario will defend her marathon gold in a field that's rapidly evolving as it becomes more professional.
In wheelchair racing, it's becoming far more realistic to be able to be a full-time athlete. And the result of that is faster athletes, it's stronger athletes.
Which in part helps explain why De Rosario has become one of Australia's biggest Paralympic stars. She's been a magazine cover girl and even had a Barbie doll manufactured in her likeness. It's given her a platform to talk about disability in a way that she once couldn't have imagined. But as her profile grew, so did her understanding that she had a voice.
There was a chance that I could actually use that platform for something really, really good, and I didn't want to be a representative of disability. I wanted to be an athlete, I wanted to be a woman, I wanted to be a person with a disability, I wanted to be everything else that I am, and all of those things be accepted as a whole.
When the Paralympics roll around, Australians get an opportunity to see a lot of disabled people doing the things they do. And they see people like you who are exceptional, whereas most disabled people aren't elite athletes. How do you deal with that?
If the only way we've decided disability is acceptable is if it's this high-performing, unattainable goal, then we're not doing justice to the entire community.
Which, according to the ABS, is about 20% of Australia's population.
And I don't want people that look like me to watch the Paralympic Games and want to be a Paralympian. I want young kids with a disability and their families and their friends to watch the Paralympics and just see endless potential. And I don't think that needs to be sport.
And when they turn on the television this Thursday, they'll see Madison De Rosario holding the Australian flag with swimmer Brendan Hall as the team marches down the Champs-Elysees. And they'll see endless potential. David Mark, ABC News.
A rare baby southern white rhino has been born at Melbourne's Werribee Open Range Zoo. The male calf was born last weekend after a 16-month pregnancy. Staff say the baby and its mother Kapenzi have been forming a remarkable bond since then. The southern white rhino was once close to extinction, but there are now about 10,000 in the wild. Zoo staff say even at such a young age, this not-so-little bundle of joy is showing plenty of personality. Now let's take a look at the weather. In Sydney today, a partly cloudy but warm day before becoming clear in the afternoon. The city reached a top of 27, 29 in Penrith. Overnight lows were above average across the state, mostly in the south and west, where temperatures were up to 10 degrees warmer. Maximums today were also well above average, reaching 13 degrees above the August average across much of the inland and coast. On today's satellite, patchy cloud with some thunderstorms can be seen over much of central New South Wales, while a trough over the Bass Strait is bringing cloud over most of Tasmania. On tomorrow's chart, a cold front will arrive tomorrow, bringing scattered showers and possible thunderstorms across the southern inland and ranges. Around the country tomorrow, showers and a possible storm in Melbourne, sunny and warm for Brisbane. For the northeast, it will be partly cloudy right across the region, a chance of showers in the Hunter. It will be similar conditions for the southeast, with a high chance of showers for most areas. It will be partly cloudy with a chance of showers for much of the west as well, the chance of thunderstorms for the Riverina, central west and southwest slopes. Off the coast, winds will be west to northwesterly, reaching 15 knots, up to 25 knots offshore, seas up to 1.5 metres. In Sydney tomorrow, it will be cloudy with a shower or two expected with some light winds. The city will reach a top of 25, 26 in Richmond. The sun will rise at 6:21 and further ahead it will be mostly sunny for much of the week, a windy but warm day on Wednesday. Well, that's all from ABC News. Enjoy the rest of your evening.